Every modern corporation relies on a massive, interconnected digital ecosystem. But without strict rules governing how these nodes interact, this environment naturally trends towards chaos, where systems overlap and data pipelines inevitably collide. Spending millions on cutting-edge infrastructure does not buy operational success. The best hardware on the market is useless if the human and systemic rules dictating its use fail to align with the actual business. To understand how organizations prevent this collapse, we have to look at the academic foundation of digital governance. We are going to analyze Chapter 1 of Information Technology Policy and Strategy. Written by Professor Richard Boateng from the University of Ghana, this text provides a rigorous framework for how institutions actually manage their technology. At the highest level, an IT policy acts as an architectural blueprint. It articulates a firm's vision and enforces compliance across every digital touchpoint. We are going to build a mental model of this IT governance stack from the ground up, isolating exactly how policies, systems, standards, and strategies function together. Mastering this precise hierarchy is the only viable way to align expensive digital infrastructure with actual corporate goals. Before we can govern anything, we have to define the assets in question. This requires separating two terms that corporate environments frequently confuse: information technology and information systems. Information technology, or IT, is strictly confined to the tangible and intangible technological assets. It is an equation made up of three components: hardware, software, and network infrastructure. Historically, the physical reality of these assets was undeniable. Governance meant physically controlling access to massive mainframes like this Electrodata system. Today, that physical footprint has expanded into massive data centers. The scale has changed to thousands of blinking nodes, but the strict definition of IT as raw hardware and software remains identical. Information systems, or IS, is a much larger construct. It encompasses the raw technology, but adds people, processes, and business policy into the equation. By introducing the human element, the requirements change. You can no longer just configure a router. You have to govern human behavior, dictate workflows, and manage daily operations. Because organizations operate within specific legal jurisdictions, these human-technology interactions must also be perfectly calibrated to national and industry laws. IT and IS policies exist precisely to govern this intersection. They dictate the appropriate use of technology by employees to achieve and sustain organizational objectives over time. Let's pause and apply these definitions directly. Should an organization have different policies for information systems versus information technology? Think back to the scope of both equations we just built and what each framework actually contains. The answer is yes. Because information systems include people and processes, an IS policy has to be broad, strategic, and heavily aligned with high-level business operations. Information technology, on the other hand, is strictly hardware and software. Therefore, an IT policy is much narrower, focusing on physical security, network constraints, and technical configurations. An IT policy functions as a highly specialized technical subset nested safely within the overarching framework of the IS policy. Establishing a high-level policy is only the first step. A broad mandate is far too abstract to dictate the daily operations of thousands of employees. It requires a tiered support structure to actually function. At the top of the stack is the policy. This is the overarching mandate approved by senior management, designed with a long lifespan of up to 5 years. Directly beneath that are standards or rules. These dictate exactly how the policy is enforced. They are highly specific and absolutely mandatory, like a strict password complexity requirement. Because they deal with specific hardware and software configurations, standards have a shorter lifespan. They must change every few years to keep pace with evolving technology. The third layer consists of guidelines. Unlike standards, these are recommended best practices rather than mandatory laws. They help users navigate the systems efficiently without strict enforcement. The foundational layer is made up of procedures. These are the detailed, step-by-step manual actions an employee takes to execute the layers above them, such as the exact software workflow to perform a server backup. Major academic institutions, like Western Michigan University, explicitly map these definitions in their IT documentation to ensure there is zero administrative confusion across their departments. A policy without supporting standards and procedures is just a corporate suggestion. Without the bottom 3 tiers, the top tier is entirely unenforceable. Even with the stack defined, corporate environments frequently conflate the term policy with strategy. These are two distinct mechanisms with entirely different functions. Policy is authorized by top management. It focuses heavily on governance, dictating the boundaries of thought and behavior. It strictly defines what is or is not done. Strategy, however, is typically formulated by middle management. It is primarily concerned with methodology and action. It outlines exactly how the organization will achieve the goals set by the policy. To use a spatial analogy, policy builds the perimeter fence. Strategy plots the optimal course inside it. Because strategy is an action-oriented process requiring active choices on budgets and personnel, it must remain highly flexible to adapt to sudden market changes. Conversely, policy is designed to be rigid. During an operational crisis, the strategy for handling it will evolve by the hour, but the policy governing data security remains absolute. Policy is the unmoving destination and the rules of the road. Strategy is the agile vehicle used to arrive there. Once those rules of the road are set, author Michael Gregg points out that policies operate by serving three distinct roles within an organization. The first pillar is regulatory. This function ensures that the organization's governing mechanisms act in strict accordance with complex industry regulations and national laws. The second pillar is advisory. It exists to educate employees and stakeholders on exactly what constitutes acceptable behavior and clearly outlines the disciplinary consequences of any violations. The third pillar is informative. These sections outline standard operating facts and general institutional knowledge without carrying a disciplinary or legal threat. We can observe these pillars in action by examining real-world documentation. This is an excerpt from Highland Bank's IT policies. The information security and ID theft sections mandate the use of encrypted protocols, access IDs, and strict internal controls. These paragraphs function primarily as regulatory and advisory mechanisms, enforcing legal compliance and dictating secure behavior. But further down in the exact same document, the technical requirements section simply recommends that users upgrade to the latest software versions for optimal access. This is purely an informative mechanism. A tightly written policy document weaves all three of these pillars together. It protects the firm legally, deters bad actors, and guides the user toward best practices simultaneously. Taking a step back, we can now see how the entire mental model connects. The four-tier governance stack of policies, standards, guidelines, and procedures nests directly inside the broader information systems equation, and the agile methodology of strategy threads perfectly through the center to drive the organization forward. Senior executives rely on this precise architecture to establish rigid boundaries of acceptable behavior while simultaneously empowering middle management to maneuver within those boundaries. This structural clarity, derived from the opening chapter of Information Technology Policy and Strategy, is the prerequisite for any successful digital transformation. With this baseline established, we can begin analyzing the actual mechanics of policy development, advanced data protection frameworks, and strategic alignment models. Without the strict boundaries of policy and the forward momentum of strategy, technology is just expensive noise.